Beer. What is it? How old is it? Where did it come from? How did we get here? And where is it going? Beer is the oldest and most widely consumed type of alcoholic drink in the world, and the third most popular drink overall after potable water and tea. It's produced by the brewing and fermentation of starches, mainly derived from cereal grains, most commonly from malted barley, though wheat, maize, rice, and oats are also used. The word beer comes into present-day English from Old English beer. The earlier etymology of the word is debated. The three main theories are that the word originates in Proto-Germanic Wenzel, meaning brewer's yeast, beer dregs, that is related to the word barley, and that somehow another word borrowed from the Latin bibere, to drink. No matter what you call it or how you pronounce it, beer is one of humanity's oldest creations. How old is it? Well, I'm glad you asked. Beer is one of the oldest drinks humans have produced. The first chemically confirmed barley beer dates back to the 5th millennium BC in modern-day Iran and was recorded in the written history of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia and spread throughout the world. It is even believed that this alcoholic drink has been a staple of civilization since the Neolithic Revolution, which detailed accounts of large-scale production dating back to Old Babylonian Mesopotamia. The people who lived in the land between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers considered beer a very important part of their diet. They called it the divine drink because of the intoxicating effect. The next civilization known for beer consumption was also from Mesopotamia, the people from the great city of Babylon. Babylonians produced over 20 different beer types around 3000 BC. Beer was also considered divine in Babylon, a true gift from the gods. It was also a sign of wealth. The Code of Hammurabi, the ancient Babylonian set of laws, decreed a daily beer ration to its citizens. Ninkasi was the Mesopotamian goddess of beer and brewing. It is possible that the first millennium BC she was known under the variant name of Kurunti, derived from a term referring to the type of high-quality beer. She was associated with positive and negative consequences of consumption of beer. Due to the divine effects of beer, there were many goddesses and gods among that time. Egyptians were excellent brewers, and they were constantly working on the taste of beer step by step so that it would be less bitter and taste better. The most popular beer in Egypt was Hecht. This was a honey-flavored brew, and in general, word for brew was Zidam. Beer brewing techniques made its way from Egypt to Greece, but it was not a huge hit right away. At this time, wine was so popular that it was the drink considered a gift from the gods. Therefore, beer was considered a barbaric drink and only fit for lower-class citizens. Beer was one of the most common drinks on the outskirts of the empire, and the legions of Rome brought beer to northern Europe. Roman soldiers could enjoy a refreshing cup of beer on their long journeys. And then came the Middle Ages. During this period, beer was mostly produced in monasteries across all of Europe. With its high nutritional value, beer was a perfect beverage for monks during the times of fasting. Since monks liked the beverage, in some monasteries, monks could drink up to 5 liters of beer per day. These brewing techniques are still in use today by the monasteries in Europe. The oldest one, Weltenberg Abbey Brewery, has been in operation since 1050 AD, and you can actually take a brewery tour along with sample the beer at the monastery. The beer production helped the monasteries survive the Dark Ages, as they made enough money to live from selling their beer. Later, the usage of hops in beer production started spreading across Europe. In the 13th century, beer was finally produced commercially in Germany, England, and Austria. You knew we would get back to Germany at some point, didn't you? The Germans were brewing beer, which they called ale, or ale, as early as 800 BC. The German brewers soon set the standard for most beer makers in Europe. Their beer was the highest quality, particularly because it was really cold and had a better taste. During the Renaissance period, beer production also had its renaissance, which means rebirth in English. In 1516 came the German Reinheitsgebot, beer purity law. What is the beer purity law? I'm glad you asked. It's a series of regulations limiting the ingredients in beer in Germany and states of the former Holy Roman Empire. The best known version of the law was adopted in Bavaria in 1516 by William IV. Similar regulations predate the Bavarian Order, and modern regulations also significantly differ from the 1516 Bavarian version. Although today, the beer purity law is mentioned in various texts about the history of beer, historically it was only applied in the Duchy of Bavaria and from 1906 in Germany as a whole, and it has had little or no effect in other countries or regions. The most influential predecessor of the modern purity law was the law first adopted in the Duchy of Munich in 1487. After Bavaria was reunited, the Munich law was adopted across its entirety of Bavaria on the 23rd of April in 1516. As Germany unified, Bavaria pushed for adoption of this law on a national basis. According to the 1516 Bavarian law, the only ingredients that could be used in the production of beer were water, barley, and hops. In 1516, Bavarian law set the price of beer, depending on the time of year and the type of beer, limited the profits made by innkeepers, and made confiscation the penalty for making impure beer. In 1810, Oktoberfest was first held in Munich. Its origins can be traced back to wedding festivities that actually featured mostly wine. Other brewers had ideas of brewing new ground. The famous Louis Pasteur discovered that yeast causes fermentation. His writings on the impact of yeast to control fermentation marked the single biggest discovery to allow for faithful replication of consistent beer batches. Fast forward or jump to today and modern time. Brewers had better ideas. The history of modern-day craft beer in the United States began in the 1960s when Fritz Maytag decided to buy the Anchor Brewing Company in San Francisco, starting the craft beer revolution. Craft beer is defined as a specialty beer production in limited quantities, and a craft brewery is defined as having an annual production of 6 million barrels of beer or less. The strength and beauty of a craft beer and a craft brewery is innovation. Brewing beer in small quantities allows for testing and sampling of many different ingredients, creating an endless number of tastes. Focused on taste and driven by consumer demand, the craft beer industry has changed the makeup of the beer market. Another pioneer in craft brewing was Dogfish Head Brewery, in a brewing company based in Milton, Delaware, founded by Sam and Mariah Calagione. Sam Calagione started brewing in his kitchen in New York City, where he created his first beer out of overripe cherries with his roommates Ken Marino and Joe Lotrugiglio. Dogfish Head has brew houses in Rehoboth, Lewes, and Milton, Delaware. The first successful beer that Dogfish Head produced was Midas Touch, which was brewed with honey, white Muscat grapes, and saffron. Although it started by only selling beer in the state of Delaware, Dogfish Head became one of the most profitable microbreweries in the United States. As of 2017, it distributed its beer in 38 states, the most recent being Louisiana. Calagione sources ingredients from around the world. Dogfish Head has become one of the most watched and well-respected breweries in the country, thanks in part to Calagione's unconventional brewing methods. These ingredients made it possible for his company to grow. The company used to be the smallest microbrewery in the United States, with Calagione starting with 3 very small kegs with propane burners beneath them. Dogfish Head's brewery in Rehoboth, Delaware, originally produced only 10 gallons of beer per day when it opened in June 1995. By 2018, Dogfish Head had become one of America's largest and most well-known breweries, producing around 15,000 gallons of beer per day. And finally, in closing out the film, the most popular style in America today of beers is the IPA. The IPA was invented in Britain. The abridged version says that British sailors were sailing to India, loaded up barrels of beer with hops, because hops were a preservative. The hops hung around in the beer for so long that they lost their fruity flavor and left a bitter tasting beer. There was even a recipe for this. The first guide to a recipe for pale ale shipped to the East does not appear to have been printed until 1821, when the first American edition of Andrew Ur's Dictionary of Chemistry said, "It is well known that with other things being equal, the liquor keeps in proportion to the quantity of hops. Fresh beer may have from a pound to a pound and a half to a barrel of 32 gallons. June beer, 2 pounds and a half. Beer for the month of August, 3 pounds. And for a second summer, 3.5. For all India voyages, 4 pounds of hops were in the recipe." It is truly a fantastic time to be alive if you're a craft beer enthusiast. So many flavors, so many styles, so many tastes out there. I can only hope that people continue to break new ground brewing new beers. I can hardly wait to see where the field goes. In closing, I have some fun facts to share with you. Did you know that craft brewers currently provide an estimated 424,000 jobs in the United States, including serving staff in the brew pubs? Craft breweries make up 98% of all U.S. operating breweries. For the best flavor, craft beer should never be tasted in a shaker pint. If you added some beer to your marinade, it's supposed to soften the meat. The acids in the beer go to work on the proteins in the meat, whether it's cooked or uncooked. Interesting fact is that the first ever beer brewers were all women. In ancient Peru, breweries were operated by women of the elite. The thirstiest country in the world per capita is the Czech Republic. The Czechs consume an average of 148 liters per year each, or about 418 12-ounce bottles per person. Store your beers upright in room temperature and in the dark to keep them fresh. In 2010, the world's oldest drinkable beer was found on a Baltic Sea shipwreck. The ship is believed to have sailed over 200 years ago. Craft beer is good for your bones because it has high levels of silicone. The United States is the second largest hop producer in the world, behind Germany. Hops are poisonous to your pets, so keep an eye on your furry friends, especially if you're home brewing. In medieval Europe, the average person drank 220 to 250 liters of beer a year. As it had undergone fermentation, it was cleaner and safer to drink than the water itself. The term rule of thumb originates from brewers who would stick their thumb in the mix to see when the temperature was right for adding the yeast. Slugs and snails love beer. If you're looking to rid the garden of these pests, put some beer in shallow containers at night. That's all I have to share with you. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep thirsty, my friends. Cheers.